In 2011, a poll was conducted by Reuters and Ipsos to learn which celebrity America deemed the most trusted and popular. Sandra Bullock failed to gain the #1 spot. Old favourite Tom Hanks missed out on the peak position. Instead, an 89-year-old who was born before sliced bread and Mount Rushmore stood at the top of the list. CNN declared that America loves Betty White. And over the last decade, that love has remained. It places Betty in a class reserved for very few, and she has taken a privileged position as the metaphorical grandmother of America. But exactly how does a woman born in 1922 become so relevant in the 21st century, especially when most of her contemporaries have either long since passed or have been retired years? Hi, I'm Diva Talk, and today we'll be taking a look at how Betty White became America's Golden Girl. Joan Rivers' manager once said, "You can't get hit by lightning unless you stand out in the rain." And Betty White has been standing in the rain since 1939. And one of the top reasons she has become so omnipresent is that her versatility in the entertainment world is legendary. Her life has been marked by decisive random meetings. In 1939, when experimental technology called TV moved its way from New York to the West Coast, she was discovered after her high school graduation by a group looking to test out TV cameras. 3 months later, covered in brown makeup and lipstick, which was necessary for the primitive fuzzy signal, and dripping under the harsh glow of bright TV lights, Betty made her screen debut. She performed a number of songs from The Merry Widow. The signal magically carried from the 5th to the 1st floor of a car dealership. World War II understandably postponed not just her career but the lives of millions, and she joined the American Women's Voluntary Service. In the 40s, Betty did everything she could to generate a presence in the industry. Movie executives deemed her unphotogenic, and as a result she turned to radio, reading commercials, voicing tiny bit parts, even making crowd noises when necessary. This is so admirable. Her determination to work, even when combated by the beauty standards of the day, was unrelenting. Eventually, in 1949, she was spotted by Al Jarvis, a famous DJ who wanted to take his talk show to the TV market. The show was called Hollywood on Television. It was a low-budget, 5.5-hour, 6-day-a-week live television talk show. Commercials couldn't be taped at an earlier point, and therefore Betty had to promote products word perfect during live commercial breaks. It's not exactly the most glamorous start for an icon. However, these first shaky footsteps into an entirely new entertainment medium underscore one of the defining attributes of Betty's career. She was versatile, adaptable, and multi-skilled. Her versatility over the next few years was trailblazing. Al Jarvis left the show in 1951, was replaced by actor Eddie Albert, who in turn resigned after 6 months, unable to cope with the 33.5 hours of live ad-lib television every week. The workload was truly extraordinary. Betty would sing to the audience, interview guests, and continue to do her own commercials live, and began to incorporate comedy sketches all within the same TV show 6 days a week.
Beginning of television, and it was a joyous experience. It was like going to college to learn television, because everything that could possibly happen happened on camera.
More importantly, she managed to do this with a level of charm and professionalism that was unthreatening to an American audience who were not used to seeing a female on a TV show, let alone lead it in the 1950s.
Present with all our might, Betty White.
Her tour de force tenacity was not only respectable, it laid the groundwork for the multi-skilled career that Betty would go on to have. As a result of the successful comedy sketches in her talk show, Betty was approached to adapt the jokes into a half-hour comedy series. Reluctantly, she agreed, set up a production company called Bandy Productions with George Tibbles and a producer Don Fedderson, and Betty became the first woman in history to produce her own sitcom. And the very first year the Emmys included actors, Betty's name was there. For reasons we'll get into later, her talk show was eventually cancelled and her sitcom ended after 2 seasons. This could have easily killed the career of most actresses in their mid-30s. However, Betty had built all the skills she needed to shapeshift into whatever entertainment form was required.
So then I started to freelance and discovered this great new world where you could kind of call your shots as far as the time that you worked. You could work on game shows or special events or whatever.
In the 60s, game shows dominated TV. They were cheap to make, drew in huge ratings, and in a world before social media, seeing stars interact on TV was addictive. Betty would quickly become known as the first lady of game shows, maintaining her presence by becoming a TV personality, keeping her career alive. And because she was trained in the art of ad-libbing for 5.5 hours a day on TV, coming up with a few funny one-liners on a game show was therefore simple. Betty attempted to redefine her image in this period. Although successful, in some corners Betty was criticised for portraying silly, flighty housewives in her first two sitcoms, with one reviewer saying her character was as stiff and contrived as her 1950s hair. Betty moved away from a proto-Stepford housewife, dismantling the 1950s persona of the innocent girl next door. She challenged what critics claimed was the definition of feminine passivity. With clever wordplay and double entendre on multiple game shows, Betty's subtle innuendo, dimple smile and wink to the camera prompted the audience to reconsider her image.
A part of the body you have two of.
Legs. First, I want to tell Betty what I killed 7 flies before I left home. And then I want to
them to death.
And over the next coming years, Betty would make hundreds and hundreds of appearances on programs from Password to Tell the Truth and the $25,000 Pyramid. She would later be crowned the First Lady of game shows, became the first woman to win an Emmy for hosting a game show on the short-lived Just Men, and was awarded the Daytime Emmy Lifetime Achievement Award in 2015 in part for her success in the game show world. Betty even met the love of her life while displaying her irreverent wit on Password, marrying the host Alan Ludden. Interestingly, Betty could still hold on to her wholesome persona when required, hosting the Macy's Thanksgiving Parade for a decade and the Tournament of Roses Parade for 17 years. As a result, she could move between worlds. The duality of the nuanced adult humour on game shows and the PG-rated, wholesome American Pie image could both coexist within the same popular TV personality. This set her apart from many of her peers. She was versatile and malleable. Her skill as a witty TV personality was so loved, Betty was offered a position to co-anchor on The Today Show. White turned down the offer, as the job required her to move from California to New York. The job eventually went to Barbara Walters. And this is where our story could end. If we were in a different universe, Betty had a successful career. She was a trailblazing writer, producer and host in the 1950s who reconstructed her persona into a popular TV personality when her acting career declined. And that's the way it could have been. But then came 1973. For those who don't understand the impact of The Mary Tyler Moore Show, they could dismiss it as just another 70s sitcom. However, this was truly a juggernaut of a show. Set in a fictional TV network, the protagonist was in direct opposition with the ideals of the day. She was a single, career-orientated assistant producer who didn't worship at the altar of persistent husband hunting. The show won 3 consecutive Emmys for Outstanding Comedy Series. It was placed at number 6 on the Screen Actors Guild list of the 101 best-written TV shows of all time. The sitcom presented complex characters that shied away from the simplistic archetypal plots usually found in the genre. The Associated Press said, "The Mary Tyler Moore Show took 20 years of pointless and insipid situation comedy and spun it on its heels, pioneering reality comedy and the establishment of clearly defined and motivated secondary characters." And this is where Betty's career reached into the stratosphere. When Cloris Leachman left the show, producers were looking for new villains to enter the narrative. A sickeningly sweet Betty White type was sought after, a satire on the 1950s persona Betty held. When no Betty White type was found, showrunners risked using the real thing. A single episode guest appearance quickly became a hugely popular supporting character. Betty played Sue Ann Nivens, the happy homemaker, or home wrecker. A sort of Martha Stewart kitchen whiz, Sue Ann was the star of her own lifestyle TV show.
It's a free-form mobile representing the 4 basic food groups. I used it on a special I did last week called What's All This Fuss About Famine?
Relentlessly perky, Disney-esque, the humour was found in the reality of Sue Ann's real nature when the cameras weren't rolling.
Mary, I love this apartment. I love what you've done to it.
I haven't done anything to it.
I know. That's your guts.
Nivens was described as the neighbourhood nymphomaniac, a man-hungry, vengeful woman who was arguably used as a comedic criticism of the sequestered 1950s. It was a brave choice for White to openly mock elements of her own persona. But with Betty's tour de force effort, she revealed she was not only in on the joke, but was stripping back layers to deconstruct it.
Sue Ann Nivens, Betty White, I have said this for some years, should be declared a national treasure. But when Sue Ann showed up, it was a whole new thing. She came in for one show and the rest is history.
Betty was nominated for 3 Emmys for Outstanding Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series, winning twice in 1975 and 1976. This was her first Emmy in over 15 years, lifting Betty to new heights and giving her international acclaim. Not bad for a woman in her 50s, an age when many careers had dwindled. Betty was soaring to new levels of commercial and critical success. In part 2 of the video, we'll be looking at Betty from the 1980s to her late 90s, and thanks for watching.